All right, now this next report is particularly upsetting. A young woman struggling with suicidal thoughts calling police to forcibly admit her for care, but dispatchers instead giving the world's most awful and insensitive advice.
למה אתה ככה מדבר?
למה? כי את מצומצמת שרוצה להתאבד, תתאבדי כבר בשקט. תתאבדי בלי להגיד לנו כלום. אבל אנחנו בדרך אלייך מצומצמת, תחכי שם.
Now, police have reportedly since begun the process of firing the officer or officers in question. But with a very checkered past in similar encounters, many are again calling for renewed attention to be paid at whether or not security services take mental health seriously. Mental health advocate, attorney, and chief of policy and international relations with the Enosh mental health organization, Liron David, joining with more. Liron, thank you so much for being with us. Now, when you hear this recording, are you surprised? Because I am. I'd like to think that this is an exception and far from the rule.
So I'm very disturbed and feel awful that this is the response people in crisis are hearing. And it is, as you said, the exact opposite than what we want to encourage when there is a discussion on mental health crisis. But I'm not surprised. I'd like to think that this is an exception, but we know that it's far from the reality. Unfortunately, we know that these cases are common and that they are costing people lives. We saw that in the past few years.
And now, as you mentioned, this is not a new phenomenon or a new issue. There was the very infamous killings of Yehuda Biadga in 2019, and then the controversial killing of Munir Anabtawi last March, to name a couple of examples. But what changes have been suggested and adopted towards addressing this issue, and what changes maybe have yet to be taken to heart?
So, first of all, the first step to address this problem is acknowledge there is a problem. And the stigma is deeply rooted in Israel and around the world, the stigma around mental health. So I think this is the first step that we as a system need to take. And regarding the steps that the country had in recent years, after the case of Iyad Khalek that died in Jerusalem, the previous president encouraged to establish a committee, an intergovernmental committee that was established, and its report was published in 2021 about how law enforcement encounter with people with disabilities need to be addressed. And one of the first recommendations is training and awareness of first responders, of police officers when they come to a hard situation with a person with mental health issues. And I can say that we in Enosh since 2007 are trying to work with the police on trainings, on raising awareness to situations like that, because sometimes it is the lack of knowledge and lack of tools to how I should respond to someone in distress. This is the barrier of first responders and law enforcement people.
All right, now it's not just the police. We know this from other reports as well, but the IDF too. We know from the Itzik Sadian affair that PTSD sufferers and other wounded veterans are not getting what they believe is enough support. And while the numbers have been dropping, recent reports show that suicide is still the leading cause of death within the IDF, with at least 11 soldiers said to have taken their own lives in 2021 alone, a third of whom are said to be of Ethiopian descent. How does the IDF deal with complaints of mental health issues? And in your knowledge, has anything changed for the better or the worse in the last year in the military?
So I'm not so expert in the military mental health system, but I can say that there are a lot of efforts of the system of the police and the IDF to prepare better the people to encounters with people with mental health issues and people with disabilities. So I can't tell you what the rates and how they specifically deal with that in the army, but I can say that we know that young people until the age of 25, mental health issues arise. So we have to take in account that young people in high school, in middle school, in the army are at risk to a mental health crisis. And if we know that and hold that in mind, we need to put much more effort on the systems that support young people in Israel with their mental health. And today there is lack of integrative services for youth that can really address mental health problems before they are becoming a crisis. Sometimes we come there when it's already a problem. We want to catch that one step in advance.
All right. Well, Liron, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck on dealing with these issues in the future. This is, of course, a very...
And if I can just add one thing that is related to that is, as I mentioned in the beginning, stigma is one of the first barriers, but we also need to put money on mental health. So on the one hand, stigma, and yesterday we published the stigma index. Enosh was reviewing mental health references in social media, and we saw that 83% of mental health references online are negative or offensive. So this is something we as a society, you as media, need to address in the day-to-day activities. So thank you for the platform.
All right, Liron, thank you so much for joining us again today. And if you are somebody you know is suffering with a mental health crisis, please do not hesitate to reach out for help.
ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at iltv.tv and watch from any device.